This is From Courtroom to Carline, the podcast where we discuss life as a lawyer and a parent.
I'm Jenna.
And I'm Rick.
Your hosts and partners both in the courtroom and in parenting.
Join us as we navigate the fascinating worlds of law and family life.
Now, this is not legal advice, but in every episode, From Courtroom to Carline is a delightful blend of legal insight and parenting hilarity. Get
ready for a roller coaster ride where law meets love and where the gavel meets the car line.
Welcome to another episode of From Courtroom to Carline, a legal parenting podcast. And on today's episode, we have search and recovery investigator Billy Lane. He is also the president of We Are the Essentials for the Missing. Welcome to the show, Billy.
Thank you so much for having me.
So why don't you go into what you do in your nonprofit?
So we have a nonprofit located here in Central Florida. We typically cover the Tampa Bay, Orlando area. 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago, we started searching for the bodies of missing loved ones. We started when Brian Laundrie went missing back in September after Gabby was taken from us. We realized that we were going to try and put our skills to use. We're a bunch of retired law enforcement, military service guys, wanted something to do, so we went out. We spent 3 weeks searching out for him. I think we came close to locating him, but unfortunately the FBI had the area blocked off. So that was sort of like a test run for us. We wanted to be operational again. We wanted to go back out and start doing stuff together as a team. So after that, our next mission was to locate Kathleen Moore. She was a victim of a murder up in Newport Richey. Sheriff Nocco had put out a request to get the assistance of the public because he couldn't locate her. They had arrested the boyfriend at the time. We went up there that morning, took about 45 minutes. We searched an area where the suspect had put her phone in a dumpster. We searched another area, then we went from behind the home through a wooded area towards the suspect's house and unfortunately located her body about 50 yards behind the home, covered up in some palmetto branches.
Wow. Obviously, when somebody goes missing, police do get involved. Do they help you? Do they work with you? How is that partnership?
The reason that we exist because there's a void in law enforcement. I always say, as a former police detective, finding a missing person isn't going to get you promoted. It's not going to make your career for you. So unfortunately, a lot of these missing people cases go on the lower spectrum. Level of the spectrum, I should say. And so most of the times it's a competition. It's unfortunate it's that way, but it just seems that way. Now, we always allow law enforcement an opportunity to do their job. We try not to be the first ones on the ground unless the family requests us to be. We're licensed private investigators, so we're working for the family for free, and that's part of the nonprofit. So we're just not your normal search and recovery guys, search and rescue people. No, we're actually investigators. We speak to the family. We listen to their entire story. We have to investigate our own facts because law enforcement typically doesn't share those with us. But no, sometimes it can be a competition. And there's other law enforcement agencies that we work well with. We have a great partnership with some, and some seems to be more of a competition. It's unfortunate. We would love to work with everybody. But sometimes, I don't know, I think they realize that we're mission driven, and for them it's a job and for us it's a mission. I would say 99% of the time law enforcement is there before we are. They've had more time to spend on the case. They have more resources to utilize to find the individual. But, I believe that God leads us to these people. We're certainly not psychics. There's been times, I would tell you, every one of our recoveries is a miracle. And if people don't believe in miracles, then just listen to some of our stories. We can tell you.
You had mentioned going back the Brian Laundrie case. Obviously, that got a lot of national attention, the Netflix documentary. What was it like working with law enforcement, and did you think that they handled that in the way that it should have been handled?
I think it was a lot of law enforcement trying to work this small little town. They were overwhelmed, I believe, by the reaction that they got from the public. Gabby's case created this whole concept of missing persons, and some people sort of fall into the Gabby scenario and some people don't. and I always call it the Gabby Petito syndrome. You know, some younger people who go missing who are popular, their story blows up because of the intrigue. And with Gabby, there was a lot of intrigue. You know, was Brian involved? Was he not involved? Where was she at? Why did Brian have the van? You know, he wasn't contacting law enforcement. The family was pushing back. So the FBI was involved, I know. I know Northport Police was involved, and I think Northport Police was overwhelmed. They were totally off the charts. And the FBI was trying to come in and provide support to them. And I think there was a big learning curve there for Northport and the FBI working with that small agency. So I believe they did the best they could, but I think that there were some issues there. I know that they tried to conduct surveillance on Brian, and it wound up being his dad or his mom or somebody. So it happens. I've done it. I've been out there doing the same thing. You're not perfect, but yeah, I think they were overwhelmed. I think they learned a lot from that case, and I pray we never have another case like that again.
The national attention, does that help you when you're trying to, conduct your mission in finding the missing person, or does that hurt your efforts?
Well, it's twofold. It's a double-edged sword. It puts a lot of pressure on a lot of people. Law enforcement now has the spotlight on them, and we, for what we do, it puts a lot of attention on us as well, especially when we're involved. And so I would say the big national cases, it is a race. It's a race to who is going to be able to accomplish the mission. And for us, there's no race to it besides the family. The family's the thing that causes us to want to do things quicker and faster, because they want to potentially find that person alive. Mm-hmm. That's our goal, and thank God we've found people alive before, even when law enforcement gave up on them. Up in Oldsmar, we found a new Awasi alive after 6 days, which was another miracle. I tell everybody what we do is we're witnesses to God's miracles, and so it's big national cases draws a lot of media coverage, and for us that's good and bad, because number one, we do get our name out there, but number two is we're being slowed down now by the media because they want to come out and interview us. So like some of the bigger cases that we worked here, we'll have the media come out and be like, hey, can we interview you and meet with you? And it's like, well, you can if you want to come meet with us in the woods and walk with us, because we're still searching. So we don't have time, and we almost have to have like dedicated members of our unit to do nothing but go meet and interview with the media. And Amanda and Shelley, they do a great job of that. Myself, I like to be in the woods. I like to be actively searching for people, because I know every minute, every hour is going to count, whether they're alive or not. We like to get to people before the demons in their minds, if it's a self-harm scenario where the demons in their minds get to them. So there's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of different type of cases you deal with. You deal with self-harm. You deal with mental health. You deal with addictions. You deal with murder. We've had 2 murder victims that we recovered that law enforcement was unable to do so. One of them was very close to the police car.
Wow.
After 3 days of searching, and so it was a miracle that we were able to find her, and it was unfortunate that somebody took her life.
Why do you think that happens? Obviously, you are in law enforcement, and I don't want to say law enforcement doesn't know what they're doing, because we obviously know that they do and they're trained. But why do you think that somebody who was so close to a police car isn't found by law enforcement, and it takes someone, with your agency or your nonprofit to do that?
I think there's different things in play here. Number one is, I think law enforcement likes to use canine cadaver dogs, and I love dogs, but there are times that law enforcement doesn't realize a dog is a tool. It's something to add to your skills. And if you don't have the basic skills to begin with, then you're going to have some issues. Most of our cases, I've heard time and time again, man, we had the dogs out here just this morning, and they didn't pick up on the decomp. So one of the problems, I think, is that I don't think a lot of law enforcement officers, especially the younger ones, don't understand the smell of decomp. And for us, that's big. That's one of the telltale signs. Some officers don't realize you have to get your hands dirty. You got to get into the woods. You got to sweat. You got to get your feet on the ground. A lot of them are risk averse, so they don't want to go out there and put themselves in harm's way. And if the four-wheeler won't get into the woods, sometimes the terrain is too treacherous. Our motto is that we have to go where others don't, because that's the only way you're going to find people. You're not going to find somebody that somebody's already walked past, some area where it's easy for somebody to search or walk through. They're going to be someplace that's going to be typically deep into the woods, or somehow covered, or hidden somehow.
How long do you search for? Obviously, you've had cases where you've recovered missing children. You've had cases where you've found them to be a victim of a murder. But are there cases where you don't find anyone? And how long do you look for before you have to have that talk with the family? Like, look, we've exhausted everything that we've been able to do, and unfortunately, we can't find them.
So I will say that that's a hard decision to make. We've searched for months for people. There are some cases where we never were able to recover the person, never were able to locate the person. And there's something to be said about a person not being where they should be. So you got to think about that. If a person was to get out of this vehicle and walk into the woods, you would think you would find him there. But when they're not, now something else is going on. There's been some type of criminality involved. Somebody's taken some exceptional means to move that person. And at that point, that's a law enforcement scenario, long-term cold case law enforcement scenario. And we will support the family. We try to do everything we can. But we've had recoveries where we found them after 4 months, which was an absolute miracle. Paul Sargent, who was a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, we had located with the help of Sunshine State Sonar, which is another search team. They do water searches. Sometimes we team up together. We were all together working a case for him, and he'd been missing for 4 months. For 3 months, we searched land and water looking for him. He went missing in his car with his dog. He had dementia. We could not locate him. He had a air tag in his car. Family was trying to track him, but that wasn't working so well. And eventually we realized that he'd went onto a ranch. His car got stuck on the ranch. We thought, 3.5 months later, the daughter calls us and says, hey, they found his car on the ranch. And I said, oh, well, was he there? She's like, no, he got out of the car with the dog and left, walked off somewhere on the ranch. So the search continued for about a week, and we were able to locate him, but he had fell in the water, and we think he drowned with the dog. And the miracle there is the fact that we could still recover him. He was still there to be recovered. And after 4 months, those were really hard conditions to do that. So I remember telling the daughter, I says, we're going to need a miracle here to bring your dad back. And it was. And I guess the biggest part of the miracle was the family was really attached to the dog, and they wanted to recover the dog as well. And the dog was laying right next to him.
Oh.
So.
Wow.
So, yeah.
You mentioned it was a miracle that he was just found to give the family some closure. So obviously that's a tough conversation to have when you do make that finding. But can you kind of describe, if you can, in what way does it bring the family like a sense of relief? Or, can you kind of describe what they're feeling when you bring them that news?
It's twofold. Some families are already ready for that, and it depends on what time of the recovery you're dealing with. If you're dealing with 4 or 5 days afterwards, most families aren't ready. If you're dealing with 4 months of agony of where's my father or where's my uncle, then yeah, they're ready to put a close to that chapter. Some families love you, some families hate you, because you just took all of their hope and dreams away that their loved one will walk back through that door again. So then they get upset with you sometimes, but they get over it. It's just momentary. Most families love what you do. They love the fact that you're willing to go out there and do what nobody else is willing to do or can't do. So it's I've given that news before, and sometimes we let law enforcement give the news. It really depends on the scenario. And a lot of times I ask the family, our team will be like, hey, do you want us to call you if and when we find your loved one, or do you just want to wait for law enforcement to reach out? So it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes they welcome the fact that they can bring him home. They can have that final goodbye and have a closed chapter, if you will.
How did you find your team? Obviously, you're prior law enforcement. We all need, help in no matter what we do in life. How did you put together your team to start this nonprofit?
Well, I call it our team because we're all in this together. There again, I think God brought us all together. We're all a bunch of retired Leos, military people, and just regular, normal citizens who are private investigators who are doing extraordinary tasks. So we have Amanda and Shelley, who are private investigators. They help me with criminal defense in that realm, but they also have a passion for what we do. Myself, we have a couple others who volunteer on and off when they have time to put into it. And there again, that's the mixture, is that there will be times we'll get a call at 9 o'clock at night, and we're out the door at 6 or 5 a.m. looking for somebody. So there's a quick turnaround. So it's not like we can sort of send out an email and figure out who's going to be ready. No, this is something that has to be a fast, quick response. So our team is pretty much dedicated by your passion to do this. If you have a passion, you're in the Tampa, Lakeland, Central Florida area, and you can engage with us and you have the skills to do this and you're physically able to do this, absolutely. We challenge people. It's challenging in itself. Not only are you using tracking skills, you're a counselor, you're an investigator, you're all those things. I can't tell you how many phone calls we continuously get throughout the night, text messages, especially when it's a hot case, what's going on, where they're at, what updates do we get, what's law enforcement doing. Sometimes law enforcement will reach out to us, so now we've got like a bridge of information coming through. So it's the team. We have a core team, but we also have others who come and go sometimes, and some who love it, some who hate it. It's very emotional because you get attached to these families, so you sort of share their grief with them. So yeah, it's very interesting dynamic that we have.
I wanted to ask you, did you ever work a case where you were either contacted by the family or police asked for your help, where at some point you started to suspect the family of foul play or wrongdoing? And how do you handle that?
For us, it's not about the who or the why, it's about the where. So we try to stay away from the conspiracy theories. Even though we may, in our hearts of hearts, think that you may have been involved, it's not about that. We may make notation of certain things if it's a law enforcement scenario afterwards, but for us, it's just aware. Where's that person going to be at? How could we associate, if we think you're the suspect, how could we associate you with a location that you might have taken that person? The Sylvia Begon case was a prime example. That was the last homicide victim that we recovered. I believe it was Mother's Day 2 years ago now. The suspect, her boyfriend, had kidnapped her and her daughter, took the daughter up to Suwannee County. Law enforcement rescued the daughter from the hotel. He took his life while law enforcement was there. And then we were able to, the father actually called me that morning when he was traveling up to get his daughter and said, I need your help. The mother of my children are missing. He was estranged from her, and she had started carrying on with another life. And so we became involved with that, to the fact of where was he associated, what locations was he associated with. So one of the locations, which was the location that we located her at, was a field where he would lock up his RV at with other RVs. Very isolated field in Waimama. I was very intrigued by that, and so was the team. And we employed the father to give us the location, and he did. And we went out there and located her in 15 minutes.
Wow.
As soon as we got out of the van, we could smell the decomp. We realized this is more likely where she was going to be at, and that's where the police car was parked on the same street. She was located pretty close to that. She was unfortunately murdered, placed on the side of the road and covered up with a blanket and a plastic kiddie pool. It only took us about 15 minutes to
Wow.
locate her, and it was very tragic. Your mind plays tricks on you sometimes when you're out there. So when you see these types of things, you're like, you got to stay focused about what you're doing. So it's challenging. So in that scenario, that was a foul play scenario, and like it says, we were just trying to figure out what location could we associate the suspect with. Very important. Paths to travel. Did they go somewhere? Did they travel somewhere? And there's been times that we thought there was going to be a criminal element, and come to find out it was an absolute accident. So you can't dive too much into that rabbit hole of conspiracy situation. You got to stick with the basics. Where are they at? How far could they have walked? Which direction did they walk into? Were they mobile? Did they put them in a vehicle? If so, where did those vehicles travel? And that's where we rely on law enforcement a lot of times, trying to get phone pings and LPRs, because that's going to help us in our search parameters.
Now, you mentioned, you go in thinking that there's some sort of criminal element, but there may be times where it's an accident. So I think of the scenario where, the person goes missing, the family thinks that, something bad happened, but it turns out that the person left on their own free will, wanted to get away for whatever reason. Have you ever had a case like that?
Absolutely. You see them all the time. We had one where we thought it was going to be a potential criminal element. Come to find out the person had walked away, fell into a water ravine, and had drowned.
Wow.
And it was unfortunate. But everybody thought that there was some criminal element. There's always that second guessing yourself in the back of your mind. As a former law enforcement officer, you're like, man, and you start running all these theories through your mind about what could happen, why it happened. But you have to stick to the basics. I mean, and I would say the unfortunate part is in a lot of these scenarios, it's a self-harm scenario. So you have to, and our team is split into two. So we take a two-prong approach. One is that they are alive and we're going to find them. And the other one is that they're no longer with us and it has to be a recovery. So we split that off. But I would tell you, we've even recovered human trafficking victims. We recovered 3 this year, 2 minors and an adult. And we didn't actually do the recovery. We did the investigation, turned it over to federal law enforcement. Local and federal law enforcement actually helped do with the recovery. We just don't do that anymore. And I did that back in the day when I worked at Homeland Security, so I have a feel for it. But I tell a lot of people, I says, most cases start as a missing person. Think about it. Homicide victim. They went missing. Where are they at? There's so many cases that start as a missing person. I think people overlook that. I think law enforcement overlooks the fact that, they start as a missing person.
Billy, where can our viewers find you? You have been phenomenal to have on the show, just listening to your stories. If somebody wants to reach out to you, whether it's for hopefully not missing persons, but even just for, investigative work, where can they find you?
They can go to wearetheessentials.com. That's our website. You can find us on Facebook. That's where we live and breathe at. It seems like that's our social media platform. A lot of people will tag us in missing persons cases. They'll contact us. We have an email address, contact at wearetheessentials.com. We're now starting to promote some merchandise and stuff like that to try to help fund this mission of ours. It's very difficult. Funding is very difficult, as you can imagine. There's not a lot of funding for organizations like us because it's law enforcement. This is a law enforcement job. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Billy.
Of course.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned, because now we're going to do our What Happened to Florida Man segment coming up next. So welcome back. On this segment of What Happened to Florida Man, we're going to go back to one of the original Florida Man stories we talked about on our episode with Jamie Parisian, I think was episode 1 or 2, where we talked about someone, I think it was a 19-year-old kid down in Bradenton or DeSoto County, who had a truck that looked like a police vehicle because it had insignia on it, it had the blue lights on it, but it didn't have the words police or law enforcement on it. It had the words booty patrol on it. And so police ended up arresting this kid for impersonating a law enforcement officer. And so it had just occurred when the first episode came out. So we didn't know what the outcome was. We just knew that he had been charged. So Lo and behold, a year or so later, we find out that the kid pled to probation, got a withhold of adjudication, paid his fine, and he's since completed probation, and he's done and his case is over with. He used what's called a plea in absentia, which allows you to plead to the charge without actually having to go into court. So I wanted to give our viewers just an update on what happened to the Booty Patrol truck case. And Billy, you had just mentioned that you actually had your own experience dealing with the Florida man. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I was actually on one of the episodes just recently, about 6 months ago. It was evidently an incident here in Florida where there was some movement of illegal substances, and evidently they located themselves in the wrong place, and the Gators started to engage with them, and evidently it turned into a whole show as always on Florida Man. So yes, it was interesting. But yeah, thanks for letting me highlight that.
Well, whether it's criminal defense or investigative work, it's never a dull moment.
Never, absolutely not.
Well, you've been great, Billy. Thank you. And that has been another episode of From Courtroom to Carline, a legal parenting podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode.